Ironcrest Correctional was a world that thrived on noise. Every morning the steel gates screamed awake before the sun did. Boots struck concrete in rhythm, guards barked orders through static radios, and somewhere down the corridor someone was always yelling, to be seen, to be heard, to feel alive. But among the chaos, there was one woman who didn't need to raise her voice. Naomi Fields. 5'6", slender frame, skin the colour of roasted coffee, and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much and decided to say nothing about it. She walked with her head slightly down, not out of fear, but precision. Every movement was economical, measured, calm. The others at Ironcrest noticed her the same way you notice background noise. She was there, but she didn't matter. In a place where reputation meant survival, Naomi's silence looked like weakness. And weakness, at Ironcrest, was blood in the water. To the guards, she was just another inmate doing time. They never asked about her case. They didn't care that she never joined fights, never joined cliques, never even flinched when the alarms went off during lockdown. They called her Monk. Not out of respect, out of mockery. Because while everyone else screamed, Naomi meditated. While others complained, she cleaned her bunk, folded her clothes with perfect alignment, and read from an old, tattered book she never let go of. No one knew what was in that book. Some said it was the Bible. Others swore it was something else. Maybe foreign, maybe dangerous. What none of them realized was that Naomi wasn't trying to disappear. She was studying. Every day she watched the rhythm of the prison, how the guards moved, when the gates buzzed open, where the blind spots were in the cameras. She memorized it all, quietly. Because at Ironcrest, control was power, and Naomi understood control better than anyone. Carla Denson didn't. They called her Brick, because she hit like one. Brick ran Cell Block D like her personal empire. Tattoos down both arms, red hair cut short and jagged, voice loud enough to silence a room. She was the kind of woman the guards tolerated because she kept the others in check. She organized gambling rings, traded contraband, and even ran fights for entertainment when the cameras malfunctioned. And for years, she'd been untouchable. If Brick didn't like you, you'd know. If she wanted your commissary, you'd give it. She didn't need a reason, just a moment. So when Naomi showed up, quiet, calm, and unimpressed, Brick didn't like it. At first it was small things. A push in the hallway, a snide comment about Monk meditating instead of fighting. A carton of milk was knocked over during lunch, by accident. Naomi didn't react. Not once. And that irritated Brick more than any insult could. Because bullies feed on reaction. And Naomi's silence starved her. Weeks passed, and Cell Block D noticed something unsettling. Brick was losing control. She'd pick fights, but Naomi wouldn't take the bait. She'd humiliate other inmates, and Naomi would just sit quietly, folding her clothes with that same calm rhythm. It wasn't fear, it was focus. And the more Brick watched her, the more she hated it. There's a strange thing about power. When someone doesn't acknowledge yours, it starts to feel like they have more than you do. That's what Naomi's silence did. It unnerved people. It made them wonder. Who was she, really? If you're watching this and you're hooked already, pause for a second. Subscribe to the channel. Because the stories we tell here, the ones they never taught, never televised, they deserve to be heard. Now back to Ironcrest. One night, the power flickered. Alarms buzzed for a moment before the backup lights kicked in. The block went quiet, that uneasy silence before chaos. Naomi sat on her bunk, hands resting on her knees, eyes closed. Her cellmate Rena couldn't take it anymore. She whispered, "Why don't you ever fight back? Brick's going to keep coming for you." Naomi opened her eyes. "She's already fighting herself," she said softly. Then she smiled, the faintest smile, calm, unbothered. Rena didn't understand it then, but that night she saw something strange, Naomi's shadow moving on the wall. Slow, deliberate, flowing like water, hands moving in patterns too precise to be random. Rena realized Naomi wasn't praying, she was practicing. The next morning, breakfast was chaos as usual. Metal trays clanged, guards shouted orders. Somewhere near the serving line, Brick stood laughing with her crew, retelling a story about her last fight. Naomi entered quietly, grabbed a tray and moved to the back of the line. Brick noticed. Her smile faded into something colder, calculating. "Monk!" she shouted across the room. "You think you better than the rest of us?" Naomi didn't respond. She kept her eyes down. Brick stepped closer. "I said, But before she could finish, a guard yelled, "Denson, back off!" Brick raised her hands mockingly and backed away, but her eyes never left Naomi. In her mind she'd already decided, if Naomi wouldn't give her fear, she'd take her peace. That night, Naomi sat alone in the common room, reading her worn-out book. Brick's crew entered, loud, laughing, smelling like smoke. They passed behind her, intentionally bumping her shoulder. Naomi said nothing, didn't even look up. Her calm felt like defiance. Brick leaned over, voice low. "You think you're untouchable, huh?" Naomi turned a page. Brick smirked. "We'll see about that." Then she walked off, leaving Naomi in the flickering light, the calm centre of a storm that was coming. In Ironcrest, peace was a luxury. And Naomi Fields was about to find out how much hers was worth. It started small, a shove, a threat, a look, and always ended the same. One woman bleeding, the other one boasting. But that day, the rhythm broke. It was lunchtime. The cafeteria was loud, trays clattering, guards pretending not to hear the insults flying across the room. Brick stood near the serving line, her crew flanking her like soldiers, laughing too loud at something that wasn't funny. Naomi Fields waited quietly behind them, tray in hand, eyes lowered. Brick glanced back. Her lips curved into a smirk. "Well, look who's back there, the monk." Her voice carried across the cafeteria. "You fasting or just scared to eat?" Naomi didn't respond. She just took a small step forward, waiting for the line to move. That silence again hit Brick harder than any insult could. It was like punching smoke. You hit it, but it never hits back. So she turned fully around. "Say something, monk. Anything. Let's see if you even got a voice under all that holy quiet." Naomi's gaze stayed fixed on the tray in front of her. Calm. Still. The air shifted. The inmates nearby could feel it. That invisible tension that creeps in before something ugly. Even the guards at the door looked up. Then Brick shoved her. A hard, deliberate push that sent the tray clattering to the floor. The sound echoed. Metal on concrete. Naomi didn't move. She just straightened her posture, hands loose at her sides. Brick chuckled. "Oh, I get it. You one of those Zen types, huh? You think you too pure to fight?" Still nothing. And that's when Brick's smirk disappeared. Her hand shot out. The slap landed. A brutal, open-handed crack that snapped Naomi's head to the side. For a moment, the cafeteria went completely still. Every voice, every sound, gone. Naomi didn't stumble, didn't cry out. She just lifted her head and looked at Brick. No rage, no fear, just calm. That calm was worse than defiance, because it wasn't the calm of someone scared, it was the calm of someone in control. For a few seconds, Brick actually stepped back, unsure what she'd just felt. The way Naomi looked at her, it wasn't human rage. It was measured, calculated, like a scientist studying an experiment. And then, as if on cue, the cafeteria doors slammed open. A guard yelled, "Break it up, Denson, step back." Brick sneered, trying to save face. Yeah, just teaching her some manners." She turned to her crew and laughed, but the laughter was hollow, forced. Naomi bent down, picked up her tray, and walked away without a word. The show was over, but something had changed. The silence she carried before was no longer just background noise. Now it carried weight. That night, Cell Block D buzzed with whispers. Nobody was talking about Brick anymore. They were talking about the woman who didn't flinch. Rena, Naomi's cellmate, tried to ask her about it. Naomi was sitting cross-legged on her bunk, eyes closed, breathing slow and deep. "You just let her slap you like that?" Rena asked. No answer. "Naomi, she's not going to stop." Naomi finally opened her eyes. "She already has." The tone wasn't arrogant. It was matter of fact, like she'd already seen how it would play out. Later that night, a guard making rounds caught something strange on the security feed. In Naomi's cell, after lights out, her shadow moved in ways that didn't make sense. Slow, deliberate motions. Her body shifted with an unnatural grace, arms tracing invisible circles, steps landing with quiet precision. It wasn't dancing. It was discipline. The guard rewound the tape twice before shaking his head and moving on. By morning, word had spread. Someone had seen her too. They said Naomi moved like water, like she was fighting ghosts, and every movement looked practiced, perfect. "Yo, she's some kind of kung fu lady or something," one inmate whispered during breakfast. Another laughed. "Kung fu? Please, she probably just stretching." But even the ones who laughed couldn't shake the image, that slap, the way Naomi never reacted, and that strange calm afterward. Rumours in prison travel faster than light. By midday, the story had grown wings. Now people said Naomi was ex-military, or ex-hitwoman, or maybe she'd trained monks overseas. Nobody knew the truth, but they knew one thing. Brick had picked the wrong woman. If you're still watching right now, you're already deep in this story. Don't wait until the end to remember. Hit subscribe, because the stories we tell here aren't just fictions. They're lessons in survival, power and silence that speaks louder than noise. All right, let's get back to Ironcrest. The next few days, Brick tried to shake it off, but she couldn't. She'd walk into the yard and feel eyes on her. Not fear, not respect, just curiosity. People whispered when she passed, not about her, about Naomi. Brick's reputation had cracks now. A single slap, her signature move, had backfired, and that calm look from Naomi had followed her like a shadow she couldn't shake. In a place like Ironcrest, fear kept you alive, and Brick could feel hers slipping away. So she decided to fix it the only way she knew how, another show. She started spreading word. Next week, the new monk was going to get taught a lesson, real one this time. Bets were placed, cigarettes traded, even a few guards knew what was coming. They wouldn't stop it, they never did. But Naomi? She kept doing exactly what she always did. She folded her clothes, meditated, moved in silence, her routine never changed. But something in her presence did. Even Rena noticed it. The stillness in the air when Naomi breathed. The way her eyes sometimes flicked toward the door like she was anticipating something inevitable. And when the day finally came, Rena asked her quietly, "You ready?" Naomi smiled, just slightly. "I've been ready." That slap in the cafeteria had been a warning, not for Naomi, but for everyone else. And deep inside Cell Block D, people were about to find out what that silence really meant. The morning after the slap, Ironcrest Correctional felt different. The air itself carried tension, whispers floating from bunk to bunk like smoke. Everyone knew Brick wasn't done, and everyone knew Naomi wasn't normal. The guards didn't care. To them, it was entertainment, a distraction from paperwork and duty shifts. They'd seen fights before, bloody, brutal, and most ended with Brick standing over someone, grinning. But this time was different. That morning, Naomi sat cross-legged on the cold floor of her cell. The lights buzzed overhead. Her eyes were closed. Her breathing was deep and measured. Every inhale, every exhale like clockwork. She wasn't sleeping. She was centering. Her cellmate, Rena, had been watching for days. "Yo, what you doing?" she finally asked. Naomi didn't open her eyes. Moving stillness. Keisha frowned. "Moving what?" Naomi smiled faintly. "You wouldn't understand." She wasn't being condescending. She was protecting something. Her peace. Later that afternoon, the guards ordered everyone to the rec yard. The women filed out, orange jumpsuits, hard faces and loud laughter. Ironcrest was a boiling pot of ego and exhaustion. But in the middle of that chaos, Naomi moved like water. Brick was already there, leaning against the fence, cracking her knuckles. Her crew, 3 women who called themselves the Wall, stood behind her, grinning like they'd already won. Brick spat on the ground. "You thought I was done with you, little monk?" Naomi said nothing. Brick stepped forward. "You think just 'cause you act quiet, people won't notice? This ain't church, sweetheart. This is Ironcrest. You either bark or you break." The circle formed again. Guards didn't stop it. In fact, one of them, Officer Malden, took out his phone pretending to check messages, but aiming the camera right at them. The inmates wanted blood. The guards wanted a show. Only Naomi wanted stillness. Brick shoved her. Hard. Naomi staggered but didn't fall. The bully smirked. Thought so. Another shove, then another. Still, Naomi stayed calm. Her feet adjusted, subtle but balanced. Her eyes, soft, focused, followed Brick's every motion. Brick cocked her hand back for another slap. "You gon' learn today." But she didn't finish the swing. Naomi moved first. One pivot, one turn. Her arm came up, not with force, but with precision. She redirected Brick's strike, her hand guiding the motion away, almost gently. Then came the palm strike, direct, centered, clean. It landed square in Brick's chest. The sound was dull, not a smack, not a thud, but something in between. Brick stumbled backward, confused more than hurt. Then her knees buckled. The yard went silent. Brick hit the ground. Not unconscious, not bleeding, just stunned. Naomi's stance remained steady, knees bent, shoulders relaxed, eyes calm. The same silence that had once made her invisible now commanded the entire yard. Nobody laughed, nobody cheered, not even the guards. Officer Malden lowered his phone slowly, realizing what he just recorded wasn't another prison brawl. It was control. Power without rage. Precision without cruelty. "Yo, what was that?" someone whispered. Naomi turned away. That was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was years of training, years of quiet pain, of remembering lessons her father had drilled into her before the world broke her spirit. Before Ironcrest, Naomi Fields had a life. She ran a small martial arts studio on the south side, a place where kids from rough neighborhoods learned more than punches and kicks. She taught them balance, breathing, and respect. Her father, Raymond Fields, was a decorated veteran who'd studied in China after the war. He believed martial arts was less about combat and more about healing. "Don't fight the person," he used to say. "Fight your reaction to them." But one night changed everything. A break-in at her studio. 2 men are trying to rob her. She defended herself too well. One of them ended up hospitalized. The other lied. And the system, as usual, didn't believe a black woman could be the victim. So she went from teaching discipline to surviving confinement, but she carried her father's lessons into that cage. Every night after lights out, she'd move, slow, precise, controlled, shadowboxing, meditating, remembering. The other inmates thought she was stretching, she was sharpening. Back in the yard, the guards finally reacted. "Break it up," one shouted, too late. Naomi didn't resist as they grabbed her. She didn't raise her voice or fight back. Brick was helped up by her crew, humiliated, furious, but also shaken. Nobody had ever touched her like that before. Nobody had ever stopped her like that before. That night, the cell blocks buzzed with new energy. Some said Naomi was a witch. Others said she was ex-military. Rena, her cellmate, just shook her head. "Nah, man, she's something else. She doesn't even blink." And in the corner of the control room, Officer Malden replayed the footage again and again. The way Naomi moved fascinated him. Not like a fighter, but like someone teaching a lesson without words. He uploaded the clip to a private server, supposedly for incident review, but once a file leaves Ironcrest, it never stays quiet for long. If you're watching this right now, take a second, hit that subscribe button, because stories like this, stories that never make the headlines, stories of quiet power and buried strength, deserve to be told. And what's coming next, you won't want to miss. By morning, Naomi had a new nickname. Not Mouse, not Quiet Girl. They called her Sifu. Even Brick avoided her gaze in the cafeteria. The balance of power had shifted, but Naomi didn't gloat. She moved through her day as if nothing had happened, because for her it hadn't been a fight, it had been a correction, a realignment. But deep inside Ironcrest's walls something else was stirring. The footage was out. The guards were whispering. The higher-ups wanted answers. And Naomi Fields, the quiet black woman who refused to break, had no idea that the single strike she delivered would soon tear the whole system open. The footage surfaced 3 days later. It started on an anonymous Reddit thread, posted under a title that read, "This woman dropped a prison bully with one move." At first, nobody believed it, but the video, grainy, shot from a guard's phone, spread fast. Within hours, it hit Twitter, then TikTok, then the evening news. You couldn't see faces clearly, but you could hear them. The silence before the strike, the gasp after, the shock that rippled through a yard full of hardened inmates. Someone added captions, "Black woman takes down bully in women's prison." Then someone else dug deeper. The hashtags changed. Ironcrest fight, Naomi Fields, justice inside. And just like that, the woman the system tried to silence became impossible to ignore. By the next morning, Ironcrest Correctional was under lockdown. Not because of violence, but because of panic. The warden, Eleanor Cates, had reporters calling her office non-stop. News vans parked outside the gates. The Department of Corrections sent investigators. Inside the walls, whispers turned into roars. The inmates didn't know who leaked the video, but they all knew what it meant. The world was watching. For the first time, the walls of Ironcrest couldn't contain its secrets. Inmate Rena, Naomi's cellmate, said later that Naomi didn't even react when the news broke. While others crowded around the TV in the rec hall, Naomi just sat on her bunk, reading an old book on Zen philosophy. She just turned a page like it wasn't her face on the screen, Rena recalled. That woman had peace nobody could touch. But peace was about to meet pressure. Behind the scenes, the truth began to unfold. Ironcrest wasn't just a prison, it was an economy, built on silence, fear, and illegal profit. The leaked footage pulled back the curtain. Investigators discovered what many inmates had whispered for years. There were organised fight nights. Fights are scheduled, recorded, and bet on by correctional officers and outsiders. Wagers placed over encrypted group chats, drugs smuggled in as payment. And Carla Brick Denson, the same bully Naomi dropped, was at the centre of it. She wasn't just intimidating inmates for respect. She was the prison's unofficial enforcer, a pawn used to keep others in line, keep the bets flowing. But when she hit Naomi, she hit the wrong one. That single palm strike didn't just end a fight, it exposed an entire underground operation. Within a week, 2 guards were suspended. Officer Molden, the man who recorded the video, was questioned for hours. He claimed the footage was for evidence, but the timestamps told a different story. It was recorded on his personal device, not a prison camera. And the betting slips found in his locker? They told the rest. Meanwhile, activists outside began calling Naomi the woman who broke the system with silence. Hashtags turned into petitions. Petitions turned into protests. The state couldn't ignore it. Ironcrest went from a private facility to a public scandal overnight. But while the world dissected the footage, Naomi remained the same. No interviews, no statements, no outbursts. She spent her days in meditation, her nights teaching breathing techniques to other inmates. Even Brick, who once spat insults her way, started sitting quietly nearby. It wasn't forgiveness, it was surrender. Because when Naomi dropped her, she didn't humiliate her. She humbled her. Brick later told investigators, "That hit wasn't for me. It was for the whole damn place." If you're still watching this right now, take a second. Hit subscribe. Because what happened next might be one of the wildest endings to any prison story you'll ever hear. Let's finish this. The media storm forced the Department of Justice to open a federal review. They found contraband, falsified logs, and falsified medical reports. Even food supply contracts are linked to corrupt vendors. But the most shocking discovery came from surveillance archives. Tapes, dozens of them, showing fights that never made into reports. Guards laughing, betting, and recording. And in one of those tapes, dated 3 months before Naomi's arrival, another woman didn't make it out alive. Her death had been listed as overdose, but the footage told a different story. That revelation broke Ironcrest for good. The warden resigned. 6 guards were arrested. Federal oversight was reinstated. The fight ring was shut down permanently. And Naomi Fields, the quiet woman who never raised her voice, became a symbol. When Naomi was finally released, a small crowd waited outside. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. "Naomi, do you think your fight changed anything? Were you aware of the ring before it happened? Do you plan to sue the prison?" She didn't answer. She just walked past them, her hands folded, her posture straight. But one reporter, an older black woman named Diane Curtis, called out softly, "Naomi, one question. After everything, what do you want people to learn from this?" Naomi stopped, turned, and for the first time in months, she spoke. "Some of us learn peace the hard way, but peace isn't quiet, it's powerful." Then she walked away. In the weeks that followed, the clip of her statement went as viral as the original fight. Universities invited her to speak, activist groups quoted her words on banners, documentaries were pitched, but Naomi declined them all. She didn't want fame, she wanted balance. She reopened her martial arts studio, this time teaching women who'd survived abuse, incarceration, and injustice. Her first class was packed. One of her students asked her why she never fought back with rage. Naomi smiled. "Because rage makes noise," she said, "and noise fades. But silence echoes." And maybe that's the real story of Naomi Fields, a woman who was buried by the system, mocked for being quiet, and underestimated because of her calm, until she turned her silence into strength that cracked concrete and forced a reckoning. She exposed a world that was never supposed to be seen. Ironcrest Correctional was supposed to bury her story. Instead, it became her testimony. The bully thought she ruled the prison. The guards thought they ran the system. But in the end, it was the quiet black woman who ruled herself. And that was enough to shake the walls. And if you've been watching this far, do me one favor before you go. Hit subscribe, because this channel doesn't tell stories of revenge. We tell stories of resistance, stories of silence that scream, Stories the world tried to bury. And trust me, the next one, you won't want to miss it.